Words are the sharpest weapons forged by ancient sovereigns to stifle the will of resistance among the masses, even before a blade is drawn from its scabbard. By redefining reality through the art of semantic subversion, rulers have transformed language into an invisible prison, where subjects voluntarily enter and then lock the gates from within. Ultimate power lies not merely in the ability to take lives or seize lands, but in the prerogative to name things. When a dynasty holds control over the meaning of every word uttered, they effectively hold the cognitive map of all their subjects. In the art of war and statecraft of old, if military might was the lion's claw intended to tear through every tangible obstacle, then the art of linguistic manipulation was the deep cunning of the fox, laying invisible traps within the human mind itself. The subversion of concepts is the pinnacle of this art of governance, where those above skillfully change the mantle of meaning for an action while preserving its pragmatic and ruthless essence within. The operational mechanism of this ploy relies on a fatal flaw in human nature, which is weakness in the face of emotional illusions and a profound dread of naked truths. The masses, by nature, are rarely astute enough to strip away the objective truth hidden behind a shell of ornate language. They react to the resonance of words and the emotions they evoke more than to the actual consequences of actions. Recognizing this blind spot, sovereigns transformed the art of ambiguity into an outstanding political science. The core technique lies in removing the label of a raw truth to paste upon it a title brimming with idealism. An act of cruel exploitation of labor will never be called by its true name. Instead, it must be redefined as a great honor, a sacred mission that the subjects are privileged to shoulder. Through the constant repetition of these subverted concepts in imperial edicts, court rituals, and every decree passed down to the common folk, the ruler gradually obliterates the original meaning of words. Subjects, upon receiving these messages, undergo a process of cognitive paralysis, thrust into a labyrinth of logic where the most absurd things are draped in the appearance of perfect rationality. This art is most clearly manifested in the way lords and princes sanctify their ambitions for territorial expansion and resource monopolization. The history of vast empires is always written with countless distorted concepts. Any lord understands that openly calling for subjects to take up arms to seize the resources of a neighbor would only attract the base and greedy, while inciting opposition from those with a conscience. To mobilize the full strength of a kingdom, the brutal spear must be cloaked in the mantle of justice. An invasion march of sweat and tears to satisfy a lord's avarice is never permitted to appear under the concept of tyranny or plunder. Instead, the entire communication system of the court will operate to subvert it into a campaign of enlightenment, an expedition to punish chaos and restore moral order. The armies sent forth are not there to annex, but to bring peace to new lands. By completely changing the linguistic frame of reference, the ruler succeeds in turning a war for personal gain into a mission of cosmic proportions. Their subjects, instead of lamenting their separation from family, burn with a blind pride. They dedicate their wealth and strength, convinced they are participating in a grand cause. The concept of loss is subverted into the concept of devotion, blurring the line between the greed of the court and the pure loyalty of the masses. In the art of maintaining internal power, nurturing a massive ruling apparatus requires the constant siphoning of resources from the lower classes. If this deprivation occurred directly, it would quickly ignite the flames of discontent. Therefore, monarchs used words as a soothing anesthetic. Heavy taxation is called by beautiful names such as contributions for border defense or gifts of gratitude to the superiors. The concept of tribute inherently carries the bitter taste of subjugation, but once renamed as the duty to cultivate the prosperity of the throne, that bitterness evaporates instantly, giving way to the pride of those granted favor. An exceptional sovereign never directly plunders wealth. Rather, they grant opportunities for subjects to demonstrate loyalty through material offerings. Even more masterfully, the court knows how to transform harsh punishments into instructional graces. A decision to exile or eliminate political opponents is not called a factional purge. The ruler will skillfully label it the cleansing of the dynasty, an act to protect the purity of social morality. The victims of these blows are stripped of all honor and transformed into the embodiment of evil, while the one who gave the order sits naturally upon the pedestal of righteousness. This subversion is so perfect that the crowd, rather than pitying the victim, turns to praise the wisdom of the ruler. The deepest objective of conceptual manipulation is not only to cover the truth of the present, but also to completely eradicate the seeds of resistance in the future. To prevent an uprising, the most effective way is to destroy the entire vocabulary that rebels would need to justify their actions. The most solid fortress protecting royal power is not stone blocks or trenches, but the helplessness of the masses in expressing their dissatisfaction. If a king monopolizes the definition of the word justice and binds it tightly to absolute obedience to the throne, then automatically every effort to demand legitimate rights by the subjects is classified as treason. Anyone who dares to stand up and criticize harshness will immediately face a sealed wall of language. They cannot use words to call for empathy, because those very words have been poisoned by the court. If the concept of freedom appears, it is redefined as freedom within the framework of loyalty to the monarch. Equality is explained as equality in the duty to obey laws and endure commands. When the language of resistance is stripped away, the dissatisfied become mute. They are like warriors stripped of their weapons on the battlefield, confused and helpless before a ruling system that has monopolized the entire foundation of societal thought through the deviousness of words. The erudition of ancient sovereigns was also reflected in how they used double-edged, ambiguous language, creating hollow concepts that could easily be molded according to the circumstances. The edicts issued often contained highly abstract terms that sounded incredibly grand, but completely lacked practical standards for measurement. Eternal order, national interest, or divine will are perfect empty shells. When the court needs to justify a new draconian policy, they simply fill those shells with their own pragmatic meaning. This intentional ambiguity turns laws into soft clay in the hands of the molder, yet into cold blocks of steel for those who must obey. Subjects will always live in a state of anxious suspense, never certain if their behavior violates some invisible definition. Furthermore, in periods of crisis when the court faces the risk of weakening due to administrative errors, conceptual subversion serves as a life-saving screen. A heavy defeat on the front lines will be reported as a tactical retreat to pave the way for a greater victory. A catastrophic famine caused by exhaustive exploitation will be explained as a trial from the heavens to temper the will of the populace. By shrouding disasters in positive titles or blaming a vague destiny, the superiors create an illusion of absolute control, making subjects believe that every calamity lies within some transcendent calculation that their narrow intellects cannot fully comprehend. The pinnacle of success in the art of linguistic manipulation is when it creates voluntary complicity from the victims of the ruling system themselves. When fraudulent definitions are repeated long enough, they take root in the belief system of the masses and become axioms that require no proof. Subjects begin to think, communicate, and evaluate one another using the very vocabulary that the ruler has implanted in their minds. They voluntarily become the guards of their own linguistic prison. If any individual dares to strip away the truth and call things by their real nature, that individual will be isolated and crushed by the surrounding crowd. The masses protect those subverted concepts with a strange fanaticism, because admitting the true meaning of words is synonymous with admitting that their entire worldview has been a massive lie. The superiors, at this point, do not need to directly suppress dissenting voices. It is the herd pressure, shaped and nurtured by a system of distorted concepts, that will automatically filter out every dangerous seed threatening the throne. The ploy of conceptual subversion has transformed the dispossessed into a tool for self-perpetuating their own exploitation, closing the perfect loop of absolute power. When a society has become thoroughly accustomed to using linguistic masks to name reality, deception no longer takes the form of a crime, but naturally becomes a fundamental mode of existence. People are born, grow up, and close their eyes for the final time in a world where every measure of authenticity has been carved away. to serve the longevity of a cunning ruling minority. Whether the primordial intellect of humanity has enough strength to shatter the invisible shackles of thought, or whether all things will forever be immersed in a soothing dreamscape, where perfect enslavement is called by the magnificent name of eternal freedom.